Every morning, a waitress helped an elderly man until his shocking truth was finally revealed. Margaret poured piping hot coffee into Frank's chipped mug, the rich aroma mingling with the crisp air of the diner. "Today's gonna be a good one," she teased, trying to make Frank smile as he pushed his thinning white hair back and focused on the steaming plate. But inside, her thoughts churned like the clouds threatening rain. She could barely keep the anxious knot in her stomach from unraveling. The pressures of bills, Jacob's dreams of sports scholarships, and the palpable tension in the air only coaxed her insecurities further to the surface. What was she doing here? Serving eggs and bacon while her son fought against a future far too uncertain? When the couple at the next table discussed the charity event and mentioned Frank's secret life as a philanthropist, her heart sank further. Did the gentle old man, with his warm smile and wandering stories, hide vast wealth behind that humble facade? The very thought punctured her reality like a cold gust in a summer breeze. Could someone so charming really be living a double life? A rush of irritation coursed through her veins. Was she simply one more player in a game she didn't understand? As the early morning buzz continued, she found herself trapped between admiration and resentment, struggling to maintain her focus. She should appreciate Frank's stories, treasure them like gold, a man wearing the weight of history. Yet here she was questioning everything. Why had she placed him on a pedestal when so many around her were caught in a similar struggle? Did she dare ask him about it? The thought made her skin feel tight. "What is so funny, Margaret?" Frank asked, peering over the edge of his glasses as she poured another cup. She forced a smile, but it felt tethered to the turmoil inside. "Oh, just thinking," she said, her voice a deceptive melody covering discord. Doubt and honesty intertwined, deepening her desire to protect the fragile connection they shared. If she pried too hard, she could lose it all and, even worse, risk setting her own insecurities bare. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks, and spring's emergence only further heightened her internal conflict. With each passing morning, a unique bond blossomed between them as they shared coffee and moments. However, with every humorous anecdote Frank shared, a dark corner of Margaret's mind darkened with desperation. She felt the push and pull of her conscience, the incessant urge to learn more, to confront him about his past, even if it bristled against the surface of their friendship. As she stood before him one morning, the air heavy with wordless tension, uncertainty gripped her heart. What if Frank was not who he appeared to be? What if her own struggles paled in comparison to the life he led? Standing on the precipice, she could almost hear the thrum of her heart against her ribs. This moment could alter everything. With tangled thoughts whirling faster than her breath, she leaned closer, her voice hoarse with emotion. "Frank, who are you really?" Margaret could see the light in his eyes turn stormy, both bewilderment and recognition mingling. As the truth loomed on the horizon, she felt a wave of vulnerability drown her resolve. What would she discover about the man she had come to hold so dearly? The fragile threads between them strained, daring to snap with the weight of revelations still undiscovered. Margaret held her breath, willing the words to flow seamlessly as she stared into the depths of Frank's eyes. The silence stretched, palpable and heavy, vibrating with both tension and the promise of revelation. It was more than mere curiosity that urged her to confront him. It was a deep-seated need to break free of her own shackles. Frank leaned back in his seat, the moment growing thick with hesitation. She studied his face for any clues, any twitches of betrayal or honesty. Doubts flickered through her mind. Did she have the right to pry? And yet, that gnawing feeling screamed for clarity, as if it was somehow linked to her own path forward. "Why don't you tell me about yourself?" She shifted strategies, softening her approach while hoping for an opening. Seeking truth wrapped in kindness, she nudged at the foundation of their growing friendship. You've been around long enough. There must be stories that shaped who you are today. The vulnerability of her question cracked Frank's composure ever so slightly. He looked away, tracing the rim of his cup with calloused fingers, lost in memories that felt both distant and alive. There was a moment, just a glimmer, when the mask slipped and she could see the weight he carried. Finally, he exhaled, the breath heavy with unspoken tales. You wouldn't believe the things I've seen. His voice was a low rumble, a hint of something shadowed beneath it. Margaret leaned closer, the world around them fading as the diner's bustle faded into a low hum. Try me. I think I am ready to listen. Isolated in their own little oasis of vulnerability, Frank's eyes locked onto hers. I spent a long time trying to make sense of my life, Margaret. I thought wealth would shield me from the pain, but it only deepened the loneliness. Each word emerged like a heavy stone lifted from his chest, but they left Margaret feeling even more adrift. His tone spiraled into the void of her own unfulfilled desires and fears. What do you mean exactly? She pressed, driven by restless urgency. Lines on his forehead deepened, revealing buried struggles. My life was never about the money. He continued slowly, as if coaxing out the threads of his past. It was about the legacy, the impact I wanted to leave behind. Those donations you heard people speaking of. They're a cry for connection, for meaning. She felt a pang of recognition, her own aspirations echoing in his words. His vulnerability was disarming, yet she couldn't shake the gnawing insecurity that accompanied it. What had she ever accomplished, beyond serving coffee? Yet here was Frank, a figure who held stories of loss and philanthropy, using wealth not as a crutch, but as a vessel for reaching others. I failed in so many ways, he added, his tone softening into raw sincerity. We all do, Margaret. Every morning is a chance to change the narrative. But it's terrifying. Margaret's heart quickened at the realization. Maybe that was what she feared most, that she was simply going through the motions. The weight of her decisions pressed down harder as Frank's confessions resonated deeply within her. Maybe we both need to rewrite our stories, she whispered, a flicker of determination igniting within her. Frank regarded her with an intensity that made her pulse race. What's holding you back? Those words hung in the air, a mirror reflecting her own internal barriers. She hadn't just come to listen. She sought permission to grow. It dawned on her that their connection, this beautiful, fragile connection, might be the bridge she needed to step beyond herself. The bell above the diner's door jingled suddenly, breaking their powerful moment. An elderly couple shuffled in, oblivious to the weighty exchange that had just unfolded. Still haunted by Frank's revelations, she knew she had to confront her own fears. Could she seize the opportunity to redefine herself? Would she dare to traverse the uncharted territory of her dreams? With a flicker of resolve in her heart, she knew one thing. It was time to act, to stop being a passive participant in her life. The chance for transformation lingered like the smell of freshly brewed coffee, tantalizingly close yet unfathomably out of reach. Frank's unflinching gaze held her steady. The time has come to face the past and reshape the future. Margaret, what will you do next? The challenge resonated, a call to action echoing in her mind as the door swung open again. The question that lingered was not only about Frank but about the defining steps she needed to take. Would she have the courage to embrace her own truth? Margaret sat back in her booth, the lingering aroma of coffee merging with the weight of Frank's words. Her heart drummed a relentless rhythm, each beat a reminder of the crossroads she now found herself at. For too long, she had styled her life to fit the expectations of others, a routine that dulled her spirit, dreams uncultivated in the haze of survival. Today, she had been given a glimpse into someone else's reality, a life rendered authentic by the courage to confront its shadows. The elderly couple that had entered the diner sat nearby. They laughed quietly over their meal, their faces etched with lines that told stories of companionship, sacrifice, and joy. Margaret's eyes shifted to their hands, intertwined over the table, and an ache nudged at the corners of her heart. Her own hands, resting in her lap, felt ghostly by comparison. They had stirred countless cups of coffee, wiped countless tables, but what legacy would she leave? Frank's voice echoed in her mind, challenging her. What is holding you back? The question looped like an anthem, persistent and demanding action. Could she unravel the tapestry of complacency she had woven since stepping into this diner so many years ago? Margaret cleared her throat. With every inhale, she felt herself gaining momentum, and with each exhale, her doubts seemed to dissipate, leaving a clearer path ahead. Maybe I need to start by reevaluating what I actually want, she murmured to herself, half hoping the universe would hear her and guide her. A flicker of determination blossomed within her. She couldn't just sit idly by while life passed her, entrapped by familiarity and fear. What if she took a leap, not into the abyss, but toward discovery? Her mind whirled with possibilities. Could she enroll in night classes? Dive into photography, a passion she had shelved for practicality? Or perhaps even pursue writing, to capture the essence of her world through storytelling, elevating even the mundane to moments of splendor? Her gaze returned to Frank, who was now scribbling something in a notebook, his brow furrowed in concentration. Inspiration cascaded through her, igniting an idea fraught with excitement and trepidation. I could ask him to mentor me, she thought, her fingers twitching in anticipation of crafting a proposal that would transform their dynamic. Hey, Frank, she called softly, summoning courage. He looked up, surprise dancing in his features. I've been thinking that maybe I could use your help. I want to explore some things beyond this diner. A flicker of interest sparked in his eyes. Exploring is good. What specifically are you thinking? As she shared her aspiration to write, to reclaim her narrative, her voice swelled with newfound urgency. I've always loved stories, but I've never let myself write them. And what you said earlier resonates with me. I want to create moments that matter. Frank's expression shifted, a blend of pride and curiosity. That's a bold step, Margaret, and it's an important one. Writing can be cathartic. You're not just telling stories. You're finding your voice. Her heart raced at his validation, each word bolstering her resolve. Yet beneath the exhilaration lay a simmering anxiety. It wasn't only about commitment, it was the fear of rejection, of revealing her innermost thoughts and experiences for critique. Could she truly lay her soul bare? Writing is a journey, not a destination. He continued, a steady timbre in his voice. There will be hurdles, but your perspective is valid, worthy of being shared. The energy between them shifted, emboldened by Frank's encouragement. It cemented a burgeoning partnership grounded in mutual growth. Yet, Margaret couldn't ignore the tremble of doubt that curled around her thoughts. What if the reception wasn't what she had hoped? What would that mean for her self-worth? A determination sparked through the doubt, compelling her forward. This wasn't just about the act of writing. It was a pathway to understanding herself, grappling with her fears, and daring to become someone who mattered. Let us start as soon as possible, she said with growing clarity. Frank nodded appreciatively, but beneath that calm demeanor, she sensed his own turmoil, unresolved and nestled deeply within him. Their journeys were intertwined, after all. As they left the diner that afternoon, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched out before them. Margaret inhaled sharply, charged with anticipation and anxiety alike. What was waiting on the other side of this commitment? Would she emerge transformed, or would she remain tethered to her past choices? The road ahead was unclear, yet she felt alive with possibility, a first step taken. Just then, she caught sight of a flyer flapping against the storefront next door. Open mic night, share your story, it shouted, and in an instant, the world wobbled beneath her feet. Frank, I think I need to do something radical, she declared, excitement clawing at her throat. I want to share my story publicly. What do you think? His eyebrow raised, a spark of curiosity igniting in his eyes. The time has come to face those fears, he said, echoing the very challenge he had presented her. Are you ready to finalize your transformation? Margaret took a deep breath. The truth was, she had never felt more ready or terrified. Perhaps this was the moment to leap. Yet, even as her conviction soared, shadows loomed in the back of her mind. Would her leap fuel her transformation or plunge her into deeper uncertainty? The stakes had never been higher. Margaret stood outside the diner, the crisp evening air tinged with the scent of impending rain, as she stared at the flyer that danced madly against the storefront. Open mic night, share your story. The words pulsed in her mind, each syllable drumming against her drum-tight anticipation. Could this truly be her moment? Would her voice carry beyond these walls? As shadows grew longer, a deepening dread coiled around her chest. She studied the flickering bulb above the diner's door, realizing its unreliable light mirrored her own wavering determination. She was terrified. Yet, she needed to face that fear. Frank's insistence echoed in her thoughts. The time has come to face those fears. Are there even enough stories in me? She whispered to herself, wrestling with the idea of stripping back the layers of her life, exposing herself to scrutiny. The past loomed overhead like a thick fog, a weight that threatened to silence her. Her mind darted back to the elderly couple from earlier, a lifetime lived. Laughter shared over facets of life unknown to her. What could she possibly contribute that would resonate with anyone beyond her diner's four walls? Had she truly lived enough to tell her story? Doubt will only hold you back, she murmured, forcing defiance into her voice. Tentatively, she approached Frank, who leaned against a nearby lamppost, his eyes lost in thought. What if I go up there and bomb? What if no one connects? Could be humiliating, or it could be liberating. The calm assurance in Frank's tone stirred her resolve. Everyone has something to share. Each story is a piece of the complex human experience. Can you really believe that? She asked hesitantly. Beneath her self-doubt, a flicker of hope took shape. Frank nodded. You have life to draw from, you just need to tap into it. Fear doesn't get to decide your path. There was conviction in his words, igniting a spark she thought had long been extinguished. What if he was right? What if she was more capable than she believed? Yeah, but my life, it's not that interesting, she replied, shaking her head. Was she really prepared to make herself vulnerable? Interesting is relative. What matters is what you feel. Authenticity resonates. Speak from the heart. He stepped closer, eyes brightening. Do you remember the first time you experienced a story that made you cry or laugh? That moment of connection is what you seek. Clutching the flyer tightly in her hand, Margaret let his words wrap around her like a warm blanket. Hadn't she longed for connection? Maybe this was a chance not only for her to recount her experiences but also for others to find fragments of their own lives within her narrative. With her heart racing, she felt conviction crystallize in her chest. I need to try this, she said resolutely, her voice thick with emotion. I want to tell the story of what it's like being here, being me, my fears and doubts. It's the messiness of life, the highs and lows that makes us human. However, doubts clawed at her confidence. Images of failure danced in her mind, loud and chaotic. What if her story fell flat? What if she revealed herself only to be met with indifference? Each what if weighed heavily, threatening to root her in place. Frank, what if I'm not ready? What if my words don't matter? She asked, her vulnerability shining through. Then you'll learn, he replied, steady and unyielding. Growth often stems from discomfort. Often, it's the emotional risk we take that leads to the greatest revelations about ourselves. His outlook anchored her doubts, helping her see the situation with fresh eyes. Taking a deep breath, she felt her spine straighten with determination. I won't let fear break me. I'm going to sign up. The statement slipped past her lips, each word a brick in the wall she was slowly building against self-doubt. As they moved toward the flyer, she could feel the anticipation swelling in her chest, almost intoxicating in its intensity. But with each step forward, the shadows of trepidation remained, reminding her of everything she could lose. Reaching the storefront, Margaret pulled the flyer from its tenancy with vigorous energy. As she penned her name in the registration slot, the stallions of anxiety bucked within her. Would her voice be strong enough to rise above the rest? Would she push through or drown beneath the weight of expectations? "Is it done?" Frank asked, his presence a steady force beside her. "Yes," she breathed, staring at the paper. A mix of dread and exhilaration ignited in her, burning away some of the fear that had clung to her heart. "Then your journey has truly begun." As they turned to walk away, renewed purpose surged through her veins, yet uncertainty quivered in her mind. What would happen in those moments on stage, face to face with the unknown? Margaret's heart raced, conviction battling with unease. She had taken a step toward transformation, but what lay ahead could turn into a revelation or a reminder of her insecurities. Just then, her phone buzzed, a message from the organizer of the open mic night. "Looking forward to hearing your story. It's going to be magical." A rush of warmth surged through her. Was this the push she needed? Suddenly, the stage loomed larger, and the potential for connection crackled in the air. But the voice of doubt hissed ominously, "Are you ready?" With a final glance back at the flyer, she whispered the truth to herself, "Only time will tell." And yet, was she ready to confront her deepest fears head-on? Or was this merely the beginning of a much more complex journey? The days leading up to open mic night felt endless, each morning a stark reminder of the looming challenge ahead. Margaret's routine unfolded around her like a rehearsal for an unwritten play, full of familiar faces and comforting gestures, pouring coffee, taking orders, pretending that nothing stirred beneath her calm surface. Yet beneath the monotony, an undercurrent of anticipation flickered, a lit fuse waiting to ignite. As she moved about the diner, Margaret caught herself stealing glances at the regulars. Each of them carried their own untold tales, and she felt a kinship with their silent struggles, as if a hidden thread connected them all. There was Mrs. Jenkins, who always lamented her losing battle against age. Young Scott, buried under the weight of dreams deferred, and the distant gaze of Mr. Collins, who often sat alone, nurturing a coffee cup like an old friend. Margaret couldn't help but ponder, what if it was her turn to share? She envisioned stepping onto that stage, the spotlight illuminating her presence as she spoke truths that resonated with others. But then the sinister voice of self-doubt whispered harsh realities of vulnerability. What if sharing exposed her to others' judgments? What if it invited more loneliness? During a particularly slow afternoon, she found herself wiping the counter absently, her thoughts swirling. Frank's words echoed in her mind. "Speak from the heart." The phrase struck a chord, fueling the growing flame of determination within her, while throwing shadows of hesitation across her thoughts. The heart was a risky place to venture, and she was uncertain if her story could withstand the scrutiny of strangers. Margaret bit her lip as she processed her mixed emotions. A moment later, she noticed Mr. Collins seated in his usual spot, his eyes gazing past the cracked window as rain began to fall gently. Something about his solemn demeanor resonated deeply with her. She walked over, fixing her voice into a gentle tone. "You all right today, Mr. Collins?" He barely turned his head, but his lips curled into a wry smile. "It's a bitter storm outside. I senti it?" "Yeah, but it brings a certain calm." As she said it, Margaret realized she was speaking to herself, hoping to embrace the impending storm looming before her. Mr. Collins nodded, his eyes still lost in thought. "As long as we have shelter, the storms become manageable. Senti life a bit like that?" "Sure feels that way," she replied, her spirit lifting at the conversation. Each exchange with him felt like a chapter unfolding, revealing hidden truths. A notion brewed within her, and she felt bold enough to probe further. "What would you say makes a good story?" He turned to her, his gaze steady. "Stories are born from experience, the moments that shape us, fill us with doubt, or ultimately transform us. There are shelter from the storm. You never know who might need to hear your experience." His words settled over her like a warm blanket, fueling her with newfound clarity. Perhaps her storms weren't meant to be faced alone. Perhaps sharing them could be a balm for both herself and those around her. She saw a glimmer of herself in Mr. Collins' two souls navigating vulnerability, each with a narrative that deserved to be told. As the clock ticked toward the evening's event, a tangible tension danced in the air. Margaret poured her heart into the diner duties, Her focus shifted yet resolutely fixed on those moments yet to come. Each clatter of dishes, each word exchanged, symbolized a step away from uncertainty, propelling her toward that mic. By the time her shift ended, she felt strangely transformed. The act of engaging with her customers had pulled her deeper into her own story, weaving their moments into hers a tapestry of shared experience. As she wiped down the last table, her heart raced with expectation mixed with anxiety. Standing at the doorway of the diner, she took a deep breath, scanning the now darkened street filled with shimmering raindrops. The night felt electric, full of promises and potential. Was this moment merely a single point in time, or the beginning of something greater? With determination stirring in her chest, Margaret turned toward her destination, each step resonating with the unyielding resolve to embrace this challenge. The flickering neon of the diner faded behind her, and she felt the storm of possibility rise. And as she stepped into the venue, a mix of fear and hope ignited in her gut. This was her moment, the moment to confront the storm within. But would she stand tall against the waves crashing around her, or would she falter under the weight of expectation? Just as she reached the open door, another message buzzed in her pocket. With a shaky breath, she pulled it out. "Can't wait to hear your story tonight. Remember, every storm leads to a new dawn." And with that, an unexpected clarity washed over her. Could her story truly resonate with someone waiting in the audience, just like Mr. Collins had? The time had come to find out. Margaret stepped into the chaotic warmth of the venue, the hum of chatter and the clinking of glasses welcoming her into a new world. The excitement in the air contrasted sharply with the quiet of her usual diner, and she found herself momentarily frozen, the weight of expectation settling onto her shoulders. As she glanced around, she saw familiar faces from the diner people she served, shared brief moments of connection with, especially in the lingering seconds as they took their sips or left their usual tips. It struck her then that these moments were her foundation. They were the raw materials for the story she felt compelled to tell. But the flicker of doubt emerged. What if they did not want to hear what she had to say? Her grip tightened on the strap of her bag, an anchor amidst the swirling uncertainty. Inhaling deeply, she located a table at the back, an out-of-the-way haven where she could collect herself. With each passing moment, she reminded herself of Mr. Collins' words. Stories are born from experience. What experiences had shaped her? Would they be worth sharing? The sound of applause pulled her focus as performers took the stage. They laughed, stumbled, and bared their souls for all to see. Margaret felt a pulse of envy and admiration. They were fearless. They showcased themselves like brightly colored butterflies having escaped their cocoons. She, on the other hand, was wrapped in a cocoon of self-consciousness, hesitating against the tide of momentum building around her. An unwelcome thought snaked through her mind. What do you have to show? Who would want to listen? The fierce skepticism threatened to engulf her. Yet amidst the despair, a spark flickered. She had started to confront her fears, little by little. The diner had become both a stage and a hiding place. There, behind the counter, she had invited vulnerability into her life even in simple exchanges. And now, standing at the very brink of her own leap, she realized that every cup of coffee poured and every fleeting conversation was her rehearsal. As the next performer waved a dramatic farewell, Margaret pushed aside the creeping doubts and pulled her phone out. She began scribbling notes in a frenzy, each word a reflection of the truths she had been too fearful to voice before. Her story wouldn't have to be polished. It could be raw, real, and filled with her imperfections that mirrored the rawness of life. She thought of Mrs. Jenkins and her struggles with aging, the heavy burden of dreams unfulfilled that Scott carried, the world of loss Mr. Collins inhabited. Each story served as a thread in her own narrative, woven together by the fabric of shared human experience. What if she shared not just her story, but their stories too? The thought sparked a new flame of courage within an understanding that her voice could act as a conduit for collective experiences, transcending her individual worries. Margaret stole a glance toward the stage, realizing it was not only an opportunity for her, but a community space for all who had experiences to share. Suddenly, The idea of stepping into the spotlight felt electrifying rather than suffocating. Yet as she stood up and prepared to make her way forward, a looming question hovered: was she ready to openly share not just her fears, but the shadows that interlaced the lives of those she had come to respect? The announcer's voice echoed through the room, pulling her focus back. Next up, we have a newcomer. An audible cheer traveled through the crowd, and Margaret's heart raced. This was the moment. She gripped her notes tightly, a mantra forming in her mind: you can do this. But as she approached the stage, the realization swept over her once more. This was more than just a test of her confidence. It was a chance to light the way through the storm she had so carefully avoided. As she took the microphone in hand, the chanting encouragement from the audience fanned the flickering flame of her resolve. In that moment, it was clear it was time to illuminate the paths she had walked and to embrace the storm brewing within. Yet, as she began to speak, an unexpected figure shuffled toward the stage from the side, casting a shadow over her moment. Everything within her froze, uncertainty crashing back like a wave. Would this surprise derail her or empower her story in unforeseen ways? All eyes turned toward him, and in that tension-filled silence, she wondered if the truth she had prepared to tell was about to change entirely. The figure that emerged from the shadows was none other than Mr. Collins. His presence disrupted the steady rhythm of Margaret's heartbeat, twisting her anticipation into knots of confusion and fear. The knowing looks shared among the audience heightened her anxiety. Had he come to speak, to derail her moment, or perhaps to support her? Each possibility fanned the flames of her anxiety, and the tangled emotions threatened to overwhelm her newfound resolve. "Margaret," he said, his voice steady but layered with unforeseen weight. The audience hung on every syllable as they absorbed the sudden shift. She had expected to unveil her story, but now, uncertainty swirled around her like an evening fog, muting her thoughts. She took a breath, tightening her grip on the microphone. The connection between them surprised her, a shared understanding that had formed across their few interactions at the diner. But in that moment, it felt fragile, and she feared it might shatter entirely. "Mr. Collins, she faltered, words retreating behind a wall of anxiety. "Let me share a story of my own first," he interjected, his gaze steady on her. The audience stirred, intrigued, giving him the stage as if to allow their worlds to collide, as they had in the diner over countless cups of coffee. Margaret felt the heat of his words wrap around her, inching toward her own unraveling. Suddenly, her fears about sharing her story felt so stark against the depth of his vulnerability. What could she possibly say that could resonate after whatever he was about to lay bare? The silence stretched taut as Mr. Collins began recounting memories of his late wife, the laughter that filled their home, the mornings he spent watching her prepare breakfast, or the deep conversations before bed. His voice, filled with emotion, conjured vivid imagery. Each word invited glimpses into the beautiful moments marred by loss and regret. Margaret's apprehension melted into admiration. She was struck by his ability to articulate pain with such grace. What had once felt like an insurmountable barrier now paled against the backdrop of his shared experience. As his tale flowed, it became a litany of connection, a theme she longed to partake in. His words illustrated that strength lay not only in the success stories but also in sharing the messiness of life. Suddenly, she recognized the duality of her situation. She wasn't merely an individual waiting for her voice to be heard. She represented a community of stories waiting to coalesce. Inspired, she felt a stirring of courage revive within her. Though still hidden in a shadow, that confidence began to strut beneath the weight of doubt. As Mr. Collins finished, the audience stood in a wave of applause, their admiration for his vulnerability evident. The room pulsed with a shared heartbeat, lifting her ever closer to her moment of truth. His eyes met hers, a silent encouragement. In that connection sparked something electrifying, a reminder that every human experience held value. Each face in the crowd reflected struggle and triumph. It was not just her story that mattered but every intertwined narrative she had come to know. Margaret sharpened her focus, feeling the notes in her hands shift and settle into clarity. This was more than just her moment. It was a metamorphosis. She was ready to expose not only her fears but also stand witness to the lives of others, lifting them alongside her. Yet, just as she opened her mouth to speak, a nervous thought intruded. What if she wasn't worthy of this moment? What if sharing their stories diluted the authenticity, leaving her exposed and vulnerable? The same questioning crept back in, urging her to reconsider when she had just found her footing. The audience quieted, anticipation suffusing the air. The spotlight felt hotter now, pressing down with the weight of their expectations. Could she articulate the truth of her experience while honoring those whose stories intertwined with hers? Every moment builds toward this. Your experiences matter, she whispered to herself, vowing to embrace the uncertainty. As she prepared to speak, Margaret's heart pounded with a duality of fear and exhilaration. She knew she would not stand alone. The stories of others provided a lifeline, a guidepost illuminating the way forward. But could she convey it deeply enough for those listening to feel it? With a newfound determination, she focused on the audience, drawing strength from Mr. Collins' words and the collective heartbeat echoing in the room. The time had arrived to find her voice, but a burgeoning uncertainty loomed, not just of what she would say, but whether the stories would resonate as she hoped. As she stepped forward into the light, she understood the true essence of her journey lay before her, entwined within the narratives of fellow souls she had come to respect. Would she manage to weave their lives into her narrative seamlessly, or would she falter, leaving their breaths held in anticipation? Margaret inhaled deeply, each breath an anchor pulling her back to the present. The spotlight, once blinding, now felt like a warm embrace, rekindling her courage. Memories flooded her mind, moments spent at the diner with Mr. Collins, the stories exchanged over coffee, the silent support that thrummed beneath their words. This wasn't just about her. It was about all she had witnessed while pouring coffee and serving meals. Each patron had their narrative waiting to be acknowledged. Her hand moved to grip the edges of the podium as she steadied her voice, the unfamiliar tremor beginning to fade. I want to share not just my story, but the stories of those who have inspired me, she began, the phrase falling from her lips like a light breaking through darkness. The audience listened, rapt, their eyes reflecting the depth of her resolve. Margaret spoke of the regulars at the diner, the weary faces, the laughter that filled the gaps of silence, the shared moments of vulnerability. She painted a picture of lives entangled in a collective struggle, a young mother juggling 2 jobs, an older gentleman reminiscing about a life once filled with joy, and an artist who came to express unspoken dreams over a cup of black coffee. Each story she recalled deepened the connection to Mr. Collins' earlier narrative, sharpening her focus and pulling her deeper into the collective experience. As she narrated, a new awareness began to dawn upon her. This wasn't merely a recounting of events. Each word spun a web of empathy, binding her truth with theirs. She realized her vulnerability could unleash a wave of collective healing. She could be the bridge between disparate lives, using her courage to illuminate their shared struggles. However, buried beneath her growing confidence, an urgent doubt gnawed at her thoughts. Would she misrepresent their stories? Could she honor their complexities while revealing her own vulnerabilities? What gave her the right to take the stage without diminishing their truths? With those uncertainties echoing in her mind, she took a moment to glance beyond the crowd, letting her gaze lock with Mr. Collins. His steady presence, a beacon guiding her through the fog of her fears, reminded her that she was not alone in this endeavor. He had risked his own vulnerability, and now it was time for her to do the same. She launched into the most poignant of her stories, the late-night conversations with a solitary customer who always left a generous tip. His casual inquiries about her dreams were a lifeline, a gentle nudge towards introspection amidst the clatter of dishes and chatter. She shared how he had encouraged her to pursue her dream of writing, how he had believed in her potential, even when she struggled to see it herself. That moment felt freeing. Every word, raw and unfiltered, flowed from the place of profound understanding. The tension she had clung to shattered, replaced by a palpable connection with her audience. They leaned forward, breathless, eager to glean from her revelations. But as she spoke, A shadow of doubt slipped in for a split second, a thought that perhaps her own aspirations paled in comparison to the profound lives surrounding her. What if she was merely a vessel revealing their stories, lacking a storyline worthy of her own? Pushing through that fleeting hesitation, Margaret harnessed the powerful resonance of their shared humanity. You see, she continued, every day we navigate our individual battles. But in these connections, these moments of honesty, we find the courage to face our fears together. With the final words hanging in the air like a solemn promise, Margaret's heart raced. Would her honesty resonate as she hoped? Were they ready to bear witness to the intertwining complexities of their lives too? The audience erupted in applause, a wave of affirmation crashing over her. Yet amid that triumphant moment, an uneasiness echoed within. Had she truly honored the souls she spoke for? Or had she merely scratched the surface of their stories? The applause buzzed around her, but thoughts of Mr. Collins weighed heavily. She caught his eye once more, and the subtle shift on his face ignited a spark of curiosity. What was his story yet to be revealed? As Margaret stepped back, anticipation displaced her earlier fears. She hadn't closed the chapter. She had merely opened a new one. The next step of her journey loomed ahead, a labyrinth of stories yet to be uncovered. Could she uncover the hidden depths of her own complexities, just as she had unearthed those of others? Margaret stood at the edge of the stage, the applause from the audience still echoing in her ears. Each clap felt like a falling raindrop, a blend of clarity and uncertainty coursing through her. She had shared not only her story but had woven the narratives of others into a tapestry of collective experience. Yet the questions remained, restless specters whispering doubts that tugged at her heart. What came next? The thought hovered above her like a fog. The lingering shadow of Mr. Collins' unsaid truths haunted her now. His presence was a puzzle, an enigma wrapped in layers she longed to peel back. What had he seen in her that she had not yet discovered within herself? Days passed, but the aftershocks of her revelations rattled her resolve. Each morning at the diner, as Margaret poured coffee, she noticed the weight of unspoken words pressing on her. The other regulars seemed oblivious to her turmoil, lost in their struggles. The young mother juggled her orders while cradling her worries. The artist sketched scenes of dreams unrealized. Yet here Margaret was, caught in a whirlwind of introspection. One quiet afternoon, while cleaning a table, she overheard whispers from a corner booth. They were talking about Mr. Collins, about how he used to be a prominent writer once. His works touching the hearts of many, now faded into obscurity. Had life reduced him to mere quiet reflection over cups of coffee? The burden of unfulfilled dreams suddenly felt heavier on her shoulders. It struck her she had pursued writing, and yet, here she was in a diner, living in the unsung margin of life. A seed of determination began to sprout within her. If she could articulate the struggles of others, was it not time to listen to her own yearning to write, to break free from the mundane? That evening, with the diner closed and the dishes washed, she pulled out a notebook. She felt the familiar weight of the pen, the ink flowing as she poured out the stories swirling in her mind. The waitress, the young mother, the artist, all unraveling into a collage of humanity intertwined. Weeks rolled into months, and with every written word, each slice of life she documented, a clearer picture of her own aspirations emerged. Yet, in the midst of this creative surge, shadows loomed once again. How could she bring her dreams to light without confronting the fear of failure? What if those who inspired her did not resonate with her telling? It was during one of Mr. Collins' visits that she made her decision. He sat at his usual booth, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup, a faint sadness in his eyes. "You seem different today, Margaret," he remarked, his voice seasoned with concern. "I've been writing," she replied, the words spilling out like a confession. She couldn't ignore the urgency anymore, not when the potential of her untold story beckoned. But what if I'm not good enough to share it? The question hung between them like thick fog. Mr. Collins paused, studying her with that penetrating gaze that had once reignited her courage. "Margaret, every story matters, yours included. You might not see it now, but your voice could ignite hope for someone else." Her heart raced. Was there a truth to be uncovered in his words? Words that invited her to dig deeper into her own narrative, to confront the risks she had been hesitant to face? Over the following weeks, she prepared. The diner became her sanctuary, and her fellow patrons, the unwitting muses of her project. Conversations turned into fuel for her narratives. She listened more intently, pen always at the ready, capturing the crumbling architecture of dreams and hopes. She felt the burgeoning ability to blend their stories with her own, the waitress who wore uncertainty like a coat, eager for change. The lineage of stories wove tighter, her fear of inadequacy slowly dissolving into a clear understanding that her journey mirrored theirs. Yet, as her confidence built, she still wasn't sure if she was ready to confront the truth of her creativity head-on. A new cycle of doubt was pulling into view, and she knew she must soon face not only her own fears but also Mr. Collins' lingering mystery. As she prepared for the next writing session, she caught Mr. Collins' eye in the diner, a knowing glimmer sparking within it. A moment of revelation hung thickly in the air. What if his truth, once revealed, could change everything for not just him but for her too? Margaret took a deep breath, her heart thrumming with unease, as she realized she was about to step into uncharted territory. Would she be ready to confront both her own narrative and Mr. Collins' hidden past? The moment of truth loomed just beyond her grasp, teetering on the brink of revelation. Margaret pushed through the swinging door of the diner, her heart racing at the prospect of uncovering more than the mundane narratives of the regulars. Today would be different. Today, she would delve deeper, not just into the lives of others, but into the life hidden behind Mr. Collins' calm demeanor. As she set about her duties, pouring coffee and serving breakfast, her thoughts were occupied by the question that had been bothering her for weeks. What could be holding Mr. Collins back? His life had so much potential. She had seen the glints of brilliance in his eyes when he spoke, yet he remained quiet and unassuming. She felt an urge to coax him into sharing more, not just for the sake of her writing, but for his own healing. "Mr. Collins," she called softly one morning as she cleared away his empty plate. "Is there something you're passionate about that you've never shared? I believe you have a story that deserves to be told." The older gentleman looked up from his coffee, surprise etching his features. A flicker of vulnerability passed through his gaze before he composed himself, an old mask slipping back into place. "It's been a long time since anyone's asked," he admitted. "I've put that part of myself away. That opened the floodgates." The two of them sat quietly together, Margaret's pen poised over her notebook, waiting for him to unravel the story he had tucked away for so many years. "I was a writer once, Margaret," he confessed, his gaze distant. "My books had a small following, but as life unfolded, I let insecurities and failures define me. I lost the passion, the will to create something meaningful." Margaret's breath hitched at his confession. She understood all too well what it felt like to hide behind fear. She felt a growing kinship with him, crystallizing the bond they had as kindred spirits, both grappling with their voices. "You're not alone in that," she said bravely. "So much of what we face in life can silence us. But what you wrote influenced so many people. That still matters today. Perhaps it is time to reclaim that part of you." Encouraged by her words, Mr. Collins' voice grew steadier as he unraveled the tale of his aspirations, his failures, and the unraveling of his creativity. In turn, Margaret shared her own fears, her dreams of writing, and how his stories had instilled courage in her to pursue her own. As the conversation deepened, a moment of understanding washed over them both. It became clear. They were mirrors reflecting one another's fears, yet they were also harbingers of hope. They both needed to reclaim their narratives. Embarking on this journey together ignited a spark within Margaret. With renewed energy, she began organizing a writing workshop at the diner. She envisioned a space where she could invite fellow patrons, including Mr. Collins, to share their stories in a supportive, intimate environment, breathing life back into the creativity that had dimmed alongside their doubts. As she set up the first workshop, excitement buzzed through her. Each participant was a piece of a puzzle that would create something larger than any individual story. Mr. Collins, though hesitant at first, agreed to lead a session. Inviting him to step onto the stage of his own life again is a risk she was willing to take. Over the weeks, the workshops blossomed. Laughter and tears mingled as stories spilled into the air, connecting the lives of everyone involved. The medium of writing proved cathartic, lush with the support of kindred souls. In each session, she saw Mr. Collins slowly reclaiming his voice, evolving from a shadow of his former self into a vibrant storyteller. Finally, the night arrived when the group would present their work to the public, a culmination of their shared journeys. As the audience filled the diner, Margaret felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. They were about to take a collective leap, stepping into the light together. Once on stage, Margaret felt an electric anticipation pulse through her. She presented her piece, intertwining her experiences with Mr. Collins' journey. The applause that followed wasn't just for her, but for everyone in the room, their unified narratives rising together as a shared testament to the human experience. As the evening closed, the applause resonated, echoing beyond the walls of the diner and into their hearts. They had shared moments of profound intimacy and vulnerability, and in doing so, they had inspired one another to reclaim their voices from the shadows. Looking across the audience at Mr. Collins, she felt an overwhelming sense of pride. They had both transformed together. He had reclaimed his storytelling essence, and she had shed her inhibitions. In that moment, she recognized that her anxiety, her fears, and even her self-doubt had forged a new narrative, one that was actively reshaping their lives. The road ahead didn't promise perfection, but they were ready to face it together. They had conquered their respective fears, forged connections of authenticity, and in doing so, achieved fulfillment beyond what they had initially imagined. This was the beginning, not the end. Together, they had taken back their rightful place in the tapestry of storytelling, and in that journey, they both found their voices ringing louder than ever. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, as it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your thoughts are essential. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what makes these heartfelt narratives possible.